Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is Sunday, day 182, September the 3rd, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Well, lots and lots of things breaking. I'm sure most of you are aware of some of these top breaking news stories, so we're just going to go down the list and just go through them. This is what it's become. The stories that we see on breaking on a daily basis are the types of stories you would see that would break maybe once a month or something. But now it's like every day you get these incredible stories breaking everywhere. There's just so much going on. It's chaotic, but it's very interesting times to be living in, and not always in a good way either. So let's go ahead and tick down the list. Well, first of all, the top story, which I'm sure everyone is paying attention to right now, is North Korea has just conducted their 6th nuke test. They're now claiming that they have a thermonuclear warhead small enough to put on an ICBM. There's a couple different things that could be going on here. Number one, either this is true and that was a hydrogen bomb that they just tested, or what they've done is they've tied together a bunch of atom bombs to make it look like they have a hydrogen weapon. The size of the blast indicates it certainly would have to be multiple atom bombs tied together, or it is in fact a hydrogen weapon. Well, if you look at the progress that North Korea has made in the past 2 years, from going to a single-stage rocket now to a multi-stage ICBM, whether or not they've perfected that, it doesn't appear that they've perfected it, but they're certainly getting close to it. And if you look at the progress they've made to go from an atom bomb to now a hydrogen bomb, if this is in fact true, then we can only assume that they are getting help. Who would be giving them the help? I can only think of two countries, really. Certainly not Russia or China. Neither of them want to see North Korea with a hydrogen bomb, I can assure you that. So that tells me that we're looking at either Pakistan or Iran. Those would be the only two people I can think of who would be able to have assisted the North Koreans in making the progress that they're making. There is a amount of time that you expect it takes to go from this particular point to this point, and we're seeing the North Koreans moving at a much greater clip. We're also having to come to grips with the fact that they obviously have a lot more nuclear material than we previously believed. Where are they getting it? How are they getting it? These are some very thought-provoking questions that I'm sure people in the military and the national security detail are having to look at right now and sift through. It's getting more and more dangerous, and I think the big fear here is that either there's going to be an accident or a miscalculation. Now, we are conducting war games right now in the region with South Korea and with Japan, and certainly what that does to Kim Jong-un is that it puts him under a certain amount of pressure. He cannot allow these military exercise to go on so close to his homeland without having a response. He must respond to it some way, otherwise he looks weak around his military and to his people. So in a way, he is kind of being forced into responding the way that he is doing. Whether or not this is a wise move for us to be doing that, it's a coin toss. I mean, it's a tough situation. Do you let Kim Jong-un continue to go on and do what he's doing with no response? Or do you try to do everything you can, short of launching a full-scale war or even a tactical strike? Do you do something to try to get him to back down? It's a very tricky situation because both parties are dealing in a situation where they have limited options and none of them good. How you scale this back, if you're in our situation, the U.S. situation, there's not a lot that we can do. China is the key to this situation. Now that North Korea has tested, stating it was a hydrogen bomb, this has to get the attention of China. They are going to have to launch some heavy, heavy sanctions. Now, I realize that the results of that would be probably a humanitarian crisis in North Korea, which China doesn't want to see. But at this point, we're reaching the point where we have a lot of very bad options. And the best of the bad options is for China to do what we know they can do, and that is to hit the North Koreans with serious sanctions, especially coming into winter. It could have devastating consequences. But if China doesn't act soon, and it is in their best interest to do so, this thing is going to probably get way out of hand, and it could lead to us having no other option but hitting them. The previous government in South Korea was not really on board with this, but the current government in South Korea, especially now that they've had a alleged hydrogen nuke test, they have to be seriously reconsidering. We know that any attack on North Korea is certainly going to result in the large amount of deaths in South Korea. Could be up to 1 million, maybe more. You can take out the regime, but it's going to take some time. And in that time, Kim Jong-un, one of two things is going to happen. Either his military is going to execute a coup and take him out, or they are going to follow his orders, and they're going to launch everything they've got on Seoul and probably Tokyo as well. They might even try to launch something at us. So there is no good solutions here. And I just really don't know where you go from here. As you know, I am been opposed to any type of military action in North Korea, but at some point you have no choice. Kim Jong-un is not crazy, he's not insane, but he's certainly playing a dangerous game. A miscalculation or an accident, and that would be it. And if it's going to happen, I guess the sooner the better, because he's only going to continue to develop more and more ICBMs with better targeting, with more and more hydrogen bombs, if in fact that's what he has. It's time for China to act. I hope they understand exactly what they're looking at, and I think they do. So I think that what we have to do now is watch over the next few days and see what China does. If they don't do something fairly drastic regarding sanctions to really bring that regime to their knees, I fear that there is no other option except for hitting them. And I fear that that will be the end of Trump's presidency. Certainly his domestic agenda will be put on the shelf, because his entire life from that point forward for the rest of his presidency will be dedicated to what is happening in the war that will be happening in North Korea. It will gobble up all the oxygen, all of his time, all of his energy, all the money, everything. The entire domestic agenda goes in the tank. Also, you can also expect that all these people, all these neocons, and all these other people who are calling for an attack on North Korea, these very same individuals, the moment that Trump does what they said he should do, they will turn on him. They will turn on him at the drop of a dime as soon as he does what they suggested he should do. That's how things go in the swamp. There's no loyalty whatsoever, and if Trump takes the action they want him to take, and then the consequences become highly negative, they will immediately spin on a dime, change their tune, and Trump will find himself very isolated and alone, with no support from the deep state or the swamp, who've been pushing him now since he was president to hit North Korea. Of course, the neocons were out this morning on every channel, John Bolton and all the rest, and I noticed when John Bolton was asked a question, what do you do about the possible up to 1 million South Koreans in Seoul being killed as a result of an attack? His response was, well, would you rather have Americans killed? which is, it's a pat statement, but it doesn't answer the question really. What are you going to do about this million, possibly million plus, who will be killed in Seoul? Are we at that point? Well, if you listen to the neocons, we're beyond that point, but they've been saying that. They were saying this during the Bush years, during the Obama years. So the neocons are always ready for war. Always. The consequences be damned. In their mind, they have a much larger goal, and the loss of life to a neocon doesn't matter at all, as long as it's not theirs. And I guess they believe they'll be perfectly safe. Maybe. But either way you look at it, the situation is not going well. China's got to act, and we'll have to watch, because they are the determining factor right now. Either China takes serious action, or we are probably headed to certain war with North Korea. Whether or not we use nukes, I don't know. Maybe MOABs can get the job done, conventional strikes can get the job done, I just don't know. But the situation is definitely code red. We're at 9.5 on the scale of a 1 to 10 of how dangerous the situation is. North Korea with hydrogen nukes and ICBMs, I don't know that you can have that. What in the world is going on in the mind of Kim Jong-un and those around him? They've been playing this game now for many, many years, and the U.S. has always backed down. But we have a different president now, and the situation is no longer just some 1940s atom bombs and some single-stage rockets. We're now talking ICBMs and possible hydrogen weapons. My. You better act, China. You better take care of business, and I think they know that. Alrighty, the petition on the whitehouse.gov website to declare George Soros a terrorist now has 110,000 signatures. Therefore, the Trump administration must now reply to that petition. We can expect probably in the next week or two to see the whitehouse.gov post up a response from the Trump administration. They're probably working on that now, and it will be very interesting to see how they handle this situation. And they have to respond. Didn't take it long to get 100,000, did it? 13 days. It's now 110. It'll probably be 150 by the end of the week. They've got to respond. Should be at least entertaining. Well, the DOJ has filed a motion in response to a FOIA request, and the motion states that the Department of Justice has found no records of any evidence that the Trump Tower was wiretapped. Of course not. What, you thought the DOJ was going to find any records of the wiretapping of Trump Tower or surveillance of Trump Tower? Of course you're not going to find any records. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means there are no records. But I don't believe we've seen the end of this story. There's much more to learn. Whether or not the deep state, whether or not the Department of Justice, the FBI, members of Congress, whether or not they really want to get to the truth, and I don't think that they do, or whether they're just going to play us, remains to be seen. I'd put my money on they're going to try and play us. Again, as I talked about in the previous video, their number one loyalty is to the state. That's who they will try to protect. But it shouldn't surprise us that this motion that they filed stating that they have found no records or any evidence of the Trump Tower being wiretapped, surveilled, should not surprise us, and we should take nothing from it. Of course, there are no records. They didn't keep any records. It wasn't done legally. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, just means it wasn't done legally. Well, a legal expert in the Washington Examiner is reporting now and stating that it is legal for the DOJ to reopen the Rotten Reverend Clinton lawsuit. And the reason being is because there is no case of double jeopardy. There was no double jeopardy because double jeopardy would only apply if a person had been charged or a jury was convened and a trial was actually held. Double jeopardy simply means you can't be tried for the same crime twice. But in the case of the Rotten Reverend, there was no trial, there was no grand jury, there was no charge, no formal charge. It was only an investigation. Therefore, it would not be double jeopardy for prosecutors to reopen the Clinton email investigation. And if the Rotten Reverend is found to have committed crimes, which we know that she did, they certainly could move forward and actually charge her, and it would be the first time. They could convene the grand jury for the first time and prosecute her for the first time. No double jeopardy here. None at all. And since we've just learned that the entire email investigation of the Rotten Reverend by the dishonorable James Comey was a complete sham and a fraud, they certainly should reopen that investigation, and I was assuming they already had. A lot of people are watching this very closely. Mr. Ray, Mr. Sessions. As reported a couple days ago, the Hollywood box office receipts are the worst in 25 years. And according to an insider, a Hollywood insider, the problems there are permanent and they are deep. There's a lot of things happening that Hollywood is experiencing that, you know, you look back to the golden age of Hollywood, the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s. Things were a lot different back then. Hollywood movie stars used to be patriotic. They used to support presidents. They used to support the country. They also weren't dealing with an alternative media, and they never could have dreamed that reality TV would be more entertaining to the average person than seeing their big Hollywood movie stars on the big screen. That's exactly what has happened. Many things have changed. Hollywood of old is not the Hollywood of today. It's totally different. People are repulsed by what they see coming out of not just Hollywood, but out of the music industry. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of things have happened, and I think that what we're looking at really is the end of Hollywood as we knew it. It will no longer be looked at the same way that it was back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Hollywood is essentially on its way out. It's in the fast stages of collapse and demise. And pretty soon, well, it's already to that point where Hollywood just simply doesn't have the same luster that it used to have. And it has a lot to do with, like I said, it has a lot to do with the fact that the overall media has changed. Reality TV, so many different options for people with their entertainment dollars. But recently, I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that people are simply boycotting Hollywood. They're very unhappy with what they see coming out of Hollywood, the filth that they put out, and with the anti-Americanism that you see coming out of Hollywood. And they're destroying themselves. And Hollywood will never ever be what it was in the golden age of Hollywood. Those days are gone, and they are not coming back. Nancy Pelosi, stating in a speech, the voters don't want to hear us criticize the president. It disrespects their decision. To criticize the president personally disrespects the judgment of the voters. Wow. This actually came out of the mouth of Nancy Pelosi. What does this tell you? It tells me one of two things are happening. Either the Democrats are finally getting the message, far too late, but they're finally getting the message that their Trump bashing has not paid off. In fact, it's done them great harm, that they have bigger problems with their own party that they need to be worried about. And focusing on Trump isn't going to help them a single bit in 2018 or 2020. And so either this is the Democrats finally realizing that this plan that they've had to try to get back into power by trashing Trump has been a miserable failure, and now they're changing course. That is possible. It's also possible that there's been a behind closed doors compromise where the Democrats, working with people probably around the president, have decided, hey, how about if we all just back off each other? How about if Trump backs off this, this, and this, and this, and we will back off this, 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 and this, and we'll protect the deep state. We'll protect because they are, in a lot of ways, bringing themselves down, bringing discredit to their actual offices and to the government itself. And they realize that people are getting angrier and angrier on both sides, and that they are actually doing damage to the institution of government as well as their own interests. So maybe the Republicans and Democrats have joined together to realize that their trashing of each other and that their scorched earth policy on both sides is actually doing them great harm and the institution that they worship. And so now they've cut a deal to back off. One of these two things is occurring. We'll have to watch to see how things play out. But that would be my guess, the latter. It is possible also that just the Democrats have gotten the wake-up call. I think it's far too late. Far too late for 2018 for sure, and probably even for 2020. Because none of these people in power in the Democratic Party want to leave. They refuse. The only way that things are going to begin to change in that party is when the leaders of that party step aside. Pelosi, Perez, Rossman Schultz, all these people, they all have to go. Maxine Waters right on down the line. There needs to be a major house cleaning on the Democrat side as well as on the Republican side. So we'll just have to watch and see, but this is fairly extraordinary. But this tells you that if Nancy Pelosi came out and made this statement, she is the leader of that party at this point, and therefore she's essentially speaking not so much to you and I, Republicans, or anyone like that, or even the media. She is speaking to her own party, members of her own party, leaders of her own party. She's telling them, hey, our efforts have failed. They've recoiled back on us, and they have not worked. We need a new strategy. Yes, you do need a new strategy, Nancy Pelosi, but it's a little too little and a little too late. We will follow this and see where it goes. Kid Rock has fired back at leftist watchdog group Common Cause over accusations that he is violating federal elections law by failing to register as a candidate for the U.S. Senate and complying with campaign contribution rules. Well, it's funny because he responded in two tweets. Number one, he said, I still have not officially announced my candidacy, and as I said on a previous video, I don't believe there is any official candidacy by Kid Rock. I think he's just playing with him. His second response was, hey, go fuck yourselves. Senators Grassley and Feinstein, head of the Judiciary Committee, are now stating that they are being blocked by the Department of Justice and the FBI to have two FBI agents testify and answer questions over the dossier and the email investigation. They also are being blocked from having access to testimony from James Rybecki. James Rybecki is considered to be a key figure in both of these scandals. Mr. Rybecki was James Comey's chief of staff. Mr. Rybecki and two other FBI agents who are needed to come and testify in front of that committee being blocked by the Department of Justice and the FBI. This is not good news. It tells us that From this alone, we need more evidence, but from this alone it tells us that Sessions and Christopher Wray are not cooperating. Why? This is the question. Why? I think we all probably already know the answer to that. It's what we talked about earlier. Protecting the deep state and the institution of government. This is the only explanation I can come to. We will see how that works. We will see how that works because it's a continuing narrative, it's a continuing theme, constantly. The DOJ and the FBI refusing to cooperate in these investigations. Eventually it will reach a boiling point. People are getting sick and tired of it. We'll see how it plays itself out, and we'll keep following it. In the meantime, Cleveland police, EMTs, are going to boycott the season opening flag ceremony after the Browns kneeled during the national anthem. Yeah, there was about 12 to 15 members of the Cleveland Browns, which did that little thing they do, kneeling during the national anthem. Now, the Cleveland Browns are they're a disgrace to the NFL. They are obviously the worst team in the NFL, by far the worst franchise in the NFL. The last fellas on earth that needed to be playing this little game are the Cleveland Browns. They need to be focusing on playing football because they're not very good at it. I'm very surprised that Hugh Jackson, the coach up there in Cleveland, allowed that to happen. Now, they haven't done it since, so maybe he came down on them. But certainly, it did not reflect very highly on him or the ownership in Cleveland. So the Cleveland police and EMTs, who generally hold the flag, the American flag, for their ceremonies, are refusing to do so. Good. The last thing the Browns needed was that distraction. What a bunch of dunces. A new NBC poll shows that Paul Eddie Munster Ryan is now as unpopular as Nancy Pelosi. Their poll shows that only 30% view Pelosi and Ryan as favorable. Well, we just looked at a poll yesterday that showed Paul Ryan in single digits. The fact that NBC was able to find 30% viewing Ryan and Pelosi as favorable was probably good. That's probably good news if you're Paul Ryan. Wow, 30% like me? Hell, that's a hell of a lot better than single digits. Maybe they need to look at an aggregate of polls, which is what I typically do. I think if you look at the aggregate, you will find that he's lower than 30%. Now, NBC, of course, conducts their news poll, and of course, they're dealing with people who still watch regular TV, network TV, which means they're dealing with people probably living in nursing homes. But the fact that they can get only 30% of those people, who are generally the most brainwashed among us, they are the most clueless among us. Only 30% of them. I think if you look at an aggregate of polls, you'll find that their approval ratings are much lower. Of course, this is asking the question favorable or unfavorable, as opposed to approval or disapproval. Slightly different ways of wording the question. So it appears that when you ask about favorability, it's slightly higher than when you ask about approval. The Reverend Rotten Clinton's former top campaign lawyer is behind another lawsuit against a state voter ID law, and the latest in a series of challenges that go back to 2015. The efforts of this particular Clinton lawyer, he is representing a group that is funded by George Soros. Yes, that's right. George Soros and these groups that seek to overturn voter ID laws, they're very well funded by Soros and they're very active. This is all based on this response to Trump launching this probe to find out how many illegal voters there were in the 2016 election, of which we can expect there was a minimum of 2 million. Some people say as high as 6 million. They obviously are fighting this with every bit of breath that they have and every bit of Soros's money, because when this probe is finished and they find that there are 2 to 6 million illegal voters, all of them most likely voting Democrat, the Democrats count very much on these illegal voters. And if this probe comes out with the actual numbers, they will begin to take the actions necessary to curb that greatly. And this could mean a loss of anywhere from 2 to 6 million votes for the Democrats in 2018 and 2020. This is hairy carry time for the Democrats. This is why they're fighting this so hard. And they are. They have been. But so far they've been unsuccessful. And they will continue to be unsuccessful. Nothing wrong with probing in to seeing if illegals are voting in the elections. And that's what it's all about. They can fight it all they want. But when the true numbers come out, and they will, we're going to learn exactly how many illegal votes were cast. And I can assure you it's at least 2 million, probably closer to 6, maybe more. We shall find out. Well, Republican challenger to Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, Carlos Reyes, was speaking to a group of supporters, and when he mentioned the name Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, the crowd responded with the old "lock her up" chant. They went on for about 10 minutes on the old "lock her up" chant. So now Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz finds herself in the same situation that Hillary was in. Now, I think that Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz is probably going to be defeated by her primary opponent. She is being primaried. But even if she manages to defeat her primary opponent, and she lives in a heavily Democrat district, I think it's very likely she could be defeated by a Republican in a Democrat in a district that votes 65-70% Democrat. So this is how unpopular Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz is. I'm still waiting for her to be forced by the party to step down. I can't believe they're going to allow her to stand for re-election. She's a dead weight on the Democratic Party, but I guess she's refusing to go. So we will have to see how that plays itself out, but I think either she'll be forced to step down, she'll be defeated in her primary challenge, and if that doesn't happen, she likely could be defeated by this Republican, Carlos Reyes. Senator Magoo was speaking at a globalist international forum in Italy, where he took the opportunity to trash Trump, calling into question Trump's judgment. Yes, that's right, Senator Magoo. That's right, Senator Magoo, who for many, many years would always talk about the fact that you should never criticize an American president or even any American politician when on foreign soil, which is exactly what he just did in Italy. Senator Magoo, I'll be looking forward to now that you're better. I'll be looking forward to your testifying in those hearings regarding the dossier and the Christopher Steele lawsuit and the lawsuit against BuzzFeed. Your health is obviously not an issue. You're well enough to trash the president on foreign soil. You can go give your testimony, and maybe we can find out more about your association with that dossier and find out maybe if you, Senator Magoo, were the one who leaked that to BuzzFeed. In which case, open your checkbook and prepare for overwhelming calls for you to step down. Possibly even, hell, if I'm Trump, I file a civil suit against him. Sue him. His wife's got a lot of money. Judicial Watch, of course, coming out and telling us what we already know. Comey perjured himself. He is in grave legal jeopardy. Well, he certainly should be, Mr. Fitton. He certainly should be. But as we can see, there is not a whole lot of justice happening inside the Beltway and the swamp. So yes, he should be gone. He should be in legal jeopardy. He did perjure himself. Some of you may have watched that video that was, a link was put up by one of my good buddies there at the Piper Report, who put the link up there. I watched it. I'm sure many of you did as well. It's clear that Comey perjured himself. No doubt about it. Will they hold him accountable? You got me. Doesn't appear that anybody is ever held accountable in the swamp. How long they can get away with that before people finally start storming the gates with pitchforks, I don't know. We'll see. A Texas sheriff has put looters on notice. He's basically stated, hey, you loot here and you could be leaving this county in a bag. Exactly right. Texans are down there. They're heavily armed. They do have the laws to protect them. You loot a Texan, you will probably get shot. Don't do it. Andrew McCarthy in the American Spectator, hell of a journalist, wrote a very good article. It's a long article. I read it. He lays out the circumstantial evidence case that it wasn't just Comey's decision to exonerate Clinton, but it was Obama's. And the word came from the very top. You can read this article on National Review by Andrew McCarthy. Pretty long article. And it's something I think we all assumed. I always assumed that it was a collaboration between the Obama administration, the Democratic National Committee, the Clinton campaign, and elements of the deep state, the intelligence agencies with Brennan, Comey, the whole group. It was a coordinated political espionage operation launched against Trump. Is exactly what it was. And yes, obviously, it came from the top. Whether or not they can prove that, or whether or not they will even try, I seriously doubt that. Obama will probably slide scot-free on this deal, because it doesn't appear there's anyone in Washington, including the Attorney General and the new FBI Director, who are interested in law or justice for anyone who's a member of the deep state. Those laws are only for you and I. Crazed liberals at a town hall have threatened State Representative Robert Pittenger, impeach Trump or else. You know, this is kind of funny, because what has happened is that the media has stirred up this pot. They spent the last year doing it, over a year doing it, and now they have created this fiction in the minds of all these lefties that they can actually just impeach the president because they just don't like him. So now the pressure is being put on these Democrats and even Republicans in some of these districts where you have Democrats who show up to the town halls, who now have swallowed the liberal media bait, and they actually believe this is a reality, that they can actually do this, and they can't. So now the Democratic Party is being forced to try to back up what the media has been pushing, and they can't do it. As I told you in a video about 2 months ago, that the liberal media was doing the Democratic Party a huge disservice by stirring up this pot, because the Democrats can't back it up, and now they're left holding the bag. The worst enemy of the Democratic Party is the liberal media. They deserve each other. Finally, Bernie Sanders goes off on Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo asked Bernie about running in 2020 again, and he had a meltdown. I should have put the link for the video, but you can see it if you want to see it. Just type in Bernie Sanders meltdown, Chris Cuomo. Yeah, Bernie went off. His face got all red, and it was just you have to watch it if you're interested in that sort of thing. It's just funny watching Bernie have a meltdown. Bernie doesn't want to run in 2020. He's had enough. He got paid off. His wife is facing legal jeopardy. He's got many other things on his mind. And a group of Democrats have put together a draft Bernie campaign. They basically sent him this draft, and they want him to sign on authorizing or confirming that he will run in 2020. And it's going to be a huge surprise for all these Democrats when they find out that their boy Bernie has no interest in running in 2020. They can nominate him all they want. He has no interest. He's got other things on his mind, believe me. Well, my friends, that is TowerGate for Sunday, day 182, September 3rd, 2017. And I only hit about half of the stories that are out there. So we'll just have to keep watching day by day. That's what it is. It's a step-by-step, day-by-day process. But as we can see, it doesn't look like anybody, even in the Trump administration, not Sessions or Wray, or any of these people, are interested in law and justice, law and order, which is the problem they'll be facing in the future if they don't get a handle very quickly on what is happening. We'll see how it plays itself out. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your day. Bye.